Before you learned to walk, someone was already forming an opinion about how you looked. Before you could speak, someone decided whether you were pretty enough, thin enough, tall enough, good enough. You did not choose your face. You did not choose your body. You did not choose the hair you were born with, or the skin, or the shape of your nose, or the size of your waist. And yet, for most people on this planet, those things they never chose became the measuring stick by which the world decided their worth. This documentary is about that measuring stick, about who made it, about who profits from it, about what it costs the people measured by it, and about whether it is possible to finally put it down. Let us begin with the scale, because the scale is staggering. The global beauty industry is worth $625 billion per year. The plastic surgery industry alone performs over 15 million procedures annually. Rhinoplasty, liposuction, breast augmentation, facelifts, Botox injections, the most performed cosmetic procedure on Earth, administered over 9 million times in the United States alone in a single year. And these numbers are growing every single year. More procedures, more products, more people attempting to fix something the world told them was broken. The industry does not create insecurity. It finds it, packages it, and sells the solution back to the person, the world already wounded. In the 1950s, a plastic surgeon named Maxwell Maltz noticed something extraordinary. He was skilled. His results were excellent. Patients came to him with crooked noses, prominent ears, scars that made them hide from mirrors. He fixed them, precisely, beautifully. And then something strange happened. Many of his patients looked in the mirror after surgery and still saw the old face. The nose they hated was gone, but they still felt ugly. The scar had been removed, but the wound remained. Maltz spent years trying to understand this. His conclusion changed everything. The face was never the problem, the self-image was. The picture we carry inside ourselves, of who we are, how we look, whether we are worthy of love and respect. That picture does not change with a scalpel. It lives deeper than skin, and it was put there long before any surgeon ever touched us. It was put there by other people. Think about the first time someone made you feel ugly. Most people can remember it exactly. The age, the place, the words. A parent comparing you to a sibling. A classmate laughing at something you could not change. A relative at a family gathering, commenting on your weight, your skin, your hair, as casually as discussing the weather. Research from the University of Florida found that children who experience appearance-based teasing show significantly higher rates of depression, anxiety, and disordered eating well into adulthood. Not for weeks, not for months, for decades. A single comment from a single person in a single moment can become the voice a person hears every time they look in the mirror for the rest of their life. That is not an exaggeration. That is neuroscience. The brain encodes shame differently from other emotions. Shame about appearance attaches itself to identity. It does not say you did something wrong. It says you are something wrong. And that distinction is everything. Body shaming is not a modern invention, but social media gave it a megaphone, and an audience, and a like button. A 2022 study published in Body Image Journal found that 94% of teenage girls and 65% of teenage boys had experienced body shaming by the age of 17. Not some, not many, 94%. Almost every young woman alive has been told by someone that her body is wrong. Too fat, too thin, too tall, too short, too much, not enough. The comments come from everywhere, from strangers online, from classmates, from friends, from family, especially from family. Research consistently shows that appearance-related comments from parents are among the most damaging because they come from the people whose opinion forms the foundation of how we see ourselves. The mother who comments on her daughter's weight at dinner, the father who tells his son he needs to build more muscle, the aunt who says you have gained weight as a greeting. These are not neutral observations. They are wounds delivered by people who love you, which makes them impossible to dismiss and impossible to forget. In 2010, Instagram launched. In 2015, Snapchat introduced face filters. In 2020, TikTok became the most downloaded app on Earth. And somewhere in those 10 years, a generation grew up, comparing their real faces to faces that do not exist. Filters that smooth skin, enlarge eyes, slim noses, define jawlines, and remove every imperfection in real time on a phone that costs less than a night out. A 2021 study in JAMA Facial Plastic Surgery found that requests for plastic surgery increasingly reference filtered selfies as the desired outcome. People are not bringing pictures of celebrities anymore. They are bringing pictures of themselves, filtered, asking surgeons to make them look like a version of themselves that only exists on a screen. This is not vanity. This is a generation that has been shown daily, hourly, what they could look like, if only they were different enough. The filter does not just show you a better version. It shows you a version of yourself that confirms everything the cruel voices already said, that you are not enough, as you are, right now. For some people, the gap between what they see in the mirror and what is actually there becomes a prison. Body dysmorphic disorder affects approximately 2% of the global population. That is 160 million people. It is characterized by an obsessive focus on a perceived flaw that is either minor or completely invisible to others. The person with BDD does not choose to obsess. Their brain, like an alarm system with a broken sensor, fires constantly about something that is not a threat. They spend hours checking mirrors or avoiding them entirely. They cancel plans, they isolate, they seek surgery after surgery, hoping this one will finally silence the alarm. It never does, because the alarm is not about the face. It was never about the face. 72% of people with BDD have considered suicide. 72%. Not because they are weak, because they have been living in a body the world taught them. Body shame does not stay in the mirror, it follows you. Into every room you enter, every conversation you have, every decision you make, every opportunity you approach, and then quietly walk away from. This is what the research shows. A 2020 study published in Body Image Journal found that chronic body shame is directly linked to reduced self-efficacy, the belief that you are capable of achieving what you attempt. In simple terms, body shame does not just make you feel ugly. It makes you feel incompetent, undeserving, invisible. For women, it shows up like this. The woman who prepared for years, studied harder than everyone in the room, knew the answers, but sat at the back and said nothing. Not because she lacked intelligence, because she had been taught that her presence required an apology, that a body like hers needed to earn the right to take up space. The woman who turned down the promotion, not because she could not do the job, but because the job meant being seen every day by people whose eyes she had learned to be afraid of. The woman who covers herself modestly, not because she is ashamed of her body, but because her body is hers, not for strangers to look at, not for the world to judge. She chose modesty, And still, someone had something to say. Cover too much, they call her oppressed. Cover too little, they call her shameless. A woman cannot win, because the judgment was never about what she wore. It was about the world's need to have an opinion about her body. That opinion was never asked for, and it was never deserved. For men, it shows up differently, but just as deeply. Nobody talks about the man who stands in front of the mirror every morning and feels the same thing. Body shame is not a woman's problem. It never was. It is a human problem that men were simply told they were not allowed to have. Man up, stop being sensitive, too short, too thin, too bald, not enough. The man who stopped pursuing the relationship he wanted, not because he lacked love to give, but because he had been told in 100 different ways that he was not the kind of person who gets chosen. The man who became aggressive, not because he was born that way, but because aggression was the only language available to someone in pain who was never allowed to admit they were in pain. The man who worked himself to exhaustion, building status and money and power, not because he wanted those things, but because he believed they were the only way to compensate for what he saw in the mirror. Body shame changes how you walk into a room, how you sit in it, how long you stay, whether you speak, whether you apply, whether you try, whether you believe, before you even begin, that you are allowed to succeed. A 2021 study from the University of Liverpool found that appearance-based anxiety affects professional performance, relationship satisfaction, social functioning, and mental health outcomes across every demographic, every age group, every culture studied. Not some people, not vulnerable people, everyone. The wound is universal. Only the silence around it differs by gender. Women are allowed to say it hurts. Men are told it should not. Both are left carrying something that was never theirs to carry, alone. And sometimes the damage goes even deeper. Some people, after years of being judged, stop wanting to be around people at all. Not because they are antisocial, not because they do not crave connection, but because every social situation became a potential courtroom. Every gathering, a place where their appearance might be commented on. Every new person, a potential source of the same verdict they have heard their whole lives. So they choose the room where nobody can look at them. Their own room, their own silence, their own company. Solitude becomes protection, not preference. Protection. The person who cancels plans, not because they do not want to go, but because getting dressed, looking in the mirror, and deciding whether today they can face the world's eyes is exhausting in a way that nobody around them understands. The person who builds their entire life around avoiding situations where their body might become the subject of someone else's conversation. Small life, safe life, lonely life, not chosen, constructed, brick by brick, from every comment, every glance, every moment they felt too visible in all the wrong ways. Research from the University of Amsterdam found that chronic appearance anxiety is one of the strongest predictors of social withdrawal and loneliness. Not depression alone, not anxiety alone. The specific fear of being seen and found wanting drives people inward, away from the connections that would actually heal them. The cruelest part of body shame is that it isolates people from the very thing that could undo it. Human connection. Being known by someone who sees past the surface. Being loved, not despite how you look, but completely independently of it. That experience is the antidote, and body shame makes it the hardest thing in the world to allow. And here is the part that nobody talks about. The psychological damage of body shame does not require extreme cases. It does not require clinical disorder. It does not require abuse. It requires only one comment from one person at the wrong moment, in the wrong year of your life, when you were still deciding who you were and whether you were worthy of being here. One comment that you are still answering decades later. Every time you hesitate, every time you hold back, every time you almost, and then don't. That is what body shame does, not to broken people, to ordinary people, living ordinary lives, quietly diminished by something someone said once and forgot immediately, while you never forgot at all. Not everyone develops a clinical disorder, but almost everyone carries something. The man who wears a hat every day because someone laughed at his thinning hair 20 years ago, and he has not forgotten. The woman who covers herself not out of shame, but because her body was never meant to be evaluated by strangers, who learned early that modesty is not weakness. It is the refusal to let the world turn her into a display. And yet, even then, even covered, even modest, someone found something to comment on. The hijab, the loose clothing, the choice to not perform beauty for people who were never entitled to it. Modesty was supposed to protect her. Instead, it became another thing for the world to have an opinion about. The person who buys expensive clothes, not because they want to, but because they learned early that the wrong clothes make you invisible in certain rooms and visible in all the wrong ways. The teenager who stops eating because someone said something at a family dinner that was meant as a joke and landed like a verdict. These are not extreme cases. These are ordinary lives, lived by ordinary people, shaped by ordinary cruelty that nobody calls cruelty. Because it is so common, we have decided to call it honesty. You have gained weight. You should do something about your hair. You would be so pretty if... These sentences are not compliments waiting to happen. They are the architecture of a self-image, built from other people's discomfort, with anything that does not fit the template they were handed. The beauty industry understands something that most people never consciously realize. Insecurity is not a problem to be solved. It is a product to be maintained. A woman who loves her skin does not buy anti-aging cream. A man who accepts his body does not buy supplements promising transformation. A teenager who feels beautiful does not spend 3 hours editing selfies before posting them. The industry needs the wound to stay open, just open enough to keep spending. L'Oreal, Estée Lauder, Unilever, the largest beauty companies in the world, spend more on advertising than on research and development. Not because their products do not work, but because making you feel that you need them is more valuable than the product itself. They do not sell moisturizer. They sell the fear of aging. They do not sell foundation. They sell the fear of being seen. They do not sell diet products. They sell the fear of taking up too much space. Fear is the product. Everything else is just the packaging. Maxwell Maltz spent years after his surgical career studying the self-image. His conclusion was radical for its time, and it remains radical now. The self-image is not fixed. It is not permanent. It is not the truth about who you are. It is a picture built from experiences, from comments, from comparisons, from the accumulated weight of other people's opinions, absorbed before you were old enough to question their authority. And pictures can be changed, not with surgery, not with filters, not with expensive products or extreme diets or the right clothes, with something far simpler and far harder, with the deliberate decision to look at yourself through your own eyes instead of the eyes of every person who ever made you feel you were not enough. Maltz called this the theater of the mind, the imagination, the internal world where the self-image lives and where it can be rebuilt. One thought at a time, one day at a time, by choosing what you rehearse inside your own mind. Who decided what beautiful looks like? Not you. The standard of beauty changes every decade, every century, every culture. In Renaissance Europe, fuller bodies were the standard of wealth and health. In 1920s America, slim, boyish figures were fashionable. In the 1950s, curves returned. In the 1990s, the fashion industry decided thin was everything again. Today, social media has created a standard that requires a specific waist, specific lips, specific cheekbones, specific everything, that for most human beings is only achievable through surgery, filters, or genetic lottery. The standard is not natural. It was never natural. It is manufactured by industries that profit from the gap between what you look like and what they have decided you should look like. And society enforces it, in comments, in glances, in the silence that falls when a certain kind of body enters a certain kind of room. You did not fail to meet the standard. The standard failed to account for you. There is no surgery that fixes this. There is no product, no filter, no diet, no amount of weight lost, or hair restored, or clothes purchased that silences the voice. If the voice was never about any of those things, the voice was about belonging, about safety, about the desperate human need to be accepted exactly as you are, by the people whose acceptance felt like survival. And for many people, those people withheld it, not out of malice, often out of their own wounds, their own insecurities, their own voices, inherited from their own families, passed down like heirlooms nobody chose, and nobody knew how to refuse. The research on body image recovery is clear. It begins not with changing the body, but with changing the relationship with the body, with learning to distinguish between the voice that is yours and the voice that was given to you by people who were themselves trying to survive. That distinction is the beginning of everything. If you are watching this, and you have spent years hiding a part of yourself that someone decided was wrong, this is for you. Your hair, your weight, your skin, your clothes, your face. None of it was ever the problem. The problem was a world that decided your worth before it knew anything about you. That is not your failure. That is theirs. You did not come into this world ashamed of your body. That shame was taught, and anything that was taught can be unlearned. Not easily, not quickly, but it can. If you are the person who made the comment at the dinner table, at the school, at the family gathering, who said the thing that felt harmless to you and landed like a verdict in someone else, this is for you too. You have more power over how someone sees themselves than you will ever know. Use it carefully. The mirror does not show you the truth. It shows you light reflecting off a surface. The truth is what you do, how you love, how you show up, what you build, what you survive. The truth is this documentary, made by someone who was told in 100 different ways that they were not enough, and kept building anyway. This has been Prometheus Axiom. We stole the fire, now we document the ash. And sometimes, in the ash, we find what was never actually broken, just buried, under other people's opinions of how we should look.